Thank you very much, Professor, Honorable Presidents, Major General, Head of College, Madam Professor, Secretaries of State, Professors, dear guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. The subject of a conference organized last October was the evaluation of the civic government's activities in criminal law, and the conference concluded that criminal codification is what Hungary can be proud of. And at this conference, Minister of Interior, Mr. Sándor Péter, portrayed the legislative process in the past 10 years as a success story. And he could do so because that qualification rests on objective data that I like to briefly summarize. The number of criminal cases between 2012 and 20 reduced by close to 70%. They came to 451,000 in 12, which reduced to 152,000 by 2020. Eurostat in 2018 still reported that in terms of public security, Hungary stood in 12th position out of the 32 countries of Europe. Based on the subjective perception of security of Bulgaria, our position is even better because among the European member countries, along with Poland and Slovakia, Hungary is in third position. Based on the global peace impact, the Economics and Peace Research Institution of Australia issued a report in July that identified Hungary as the 19th most secure out of the 162 countries looked at. So according to Eurostat and also in an international comparison, Hungary is one of the safest countries in the world. The European Council's Commission compiled an evaluation report in 2022 that was published on the 5th of October. According to the statement contained in the report, according to the duration of judgment, 2020 figures show that the most effective criminal legislative track in Hungary is the criminal track. So what explains these results that we can duly be proud of? The results are good because the targets of the criminal policy are right and well chosen. They are clear, they fall in line with the moral values of society, and the methods applied are efficient, which is confirmed by the results, because successful codification must be based on a good criminal law. Since Francis, we know that it embodies the entirety of all of the measures that are applied by the government to fight crime. So in other words, it's criminal policy that should drive criminal judgments. So which are these criminal targets and results based upon which successful criminal activities are born out of? They are made up of the preambles of international criminal codes and other criminal measures that were already mentioned by the Madam Minister earlier, but I'll try and summarize the essence of them. The state always stands by the party suffering the criminal injustice. And when it comes to the realization of criminal claims, there is consistency in the criminal system, and against the perpetrators, the law acts with force. And it's the courts that can counterbalance the strictness of the law, which act in a strict but reasonable manner. The criminal acts we have must be such that they guarantee the security of law-abiding citizens, and the most essential obligation of the state is to protect human life, which comes before everything. And citizens are also given a right to self-defense. And In the fight against corruption, they use all legal means and also to act against individual and group values that suppress the rights of others. Pedophilia and similar crimes are strictly punished and victims are helped, and criminal responsibility involves financial fines and other measures. In Hungary, by consistently applying the law, the criminal system proved that by increasing the punishment and the defense, self-defense of victims, put a brake to crime and made it clear to the world that Hungary is not a crime paradise. And substantial law also differentiates between the different groups, exposed groups, giving special attention to women and children, and protecting families, which also serves the unity of the nation. The criminal policy gives a strong answer to crime when it finds efficient means of fighting such crimes. The criminal code of a state of law, rule of law, efficiently protects the rights of citizens, and our code was born out of the thought, and it's suitable for offering more coherent regulation than before. The statistical data quoted before prove that the enforcement of a unified criminal policy required the introduction of a new code, and the same data actually disproved the worries of representatives of the Helsinki Committee, which showed that, which claimed that they were inefficient, and they linked criminal code to social reality, and for the first time in history they saw the love of justice and search for justice as national characteristics of Hungarians as the main traits of the code. And the need for a new code also emerged at the time of the regime change. Act 4 of 1978 had to be adjusted to the changed societal and legal circumstances. So there was a number of motions submitted in areas affected by the regime change, for example, criminal acts against the state or the government. The criminal code has one new feature which is worth mentioning, which is adjusted to the requirements of the regime change. Previously, the Constitutional Court passed Resolution 53/1993, which is now included in Article 28 of the Fundamental Law, and it talks about criminal liability and the conditions that must be in place.
A törvényesség elvét és az időbeli hatályt megállapítás
on creating harmony with a retroactive effect with national rights and the fundamental law. We heard many times that the punitive sanctions have the role of maintaining the wholeness of legal and moral norms where other sanctions don't help, as set out by the decision of the Constitutional Court. So this exclusive role of the criminal code must be preserved, because otherwise the basic values of such as rationality and fairness may be violated. Because there is a phenomenon which sets out that other rights or other codes sanction certain behavioral patterns whereby the impact of the punish goes beyond the any judgment that would be passed by the criminal code. And sometimes there is a legal disadvantage that can be expressed in terms of millions of forints, and it also invokes certain consequences, existential consequences that go beyond the criminal toolkit. Such procedures ignore certain provisions of the criminal code, and due to that, they punish or impose improportional punishments on acts that are of minor nature for society. And thus they threaten legal security and the stability of the legal system. And the criminal code and the punitive policies were successful because they set the right targets and found the right solutions. And to shake and relativize the position of the criminal code is a grave mistake. And what we must keep in time is that the lawmaker must judge criminal acts according to their danger to society. And the punitive parties are imposing limitations, and they apply them in a proportionate manner.
The effects of a strict legal penal policy convey the expectations of society. The consequences must be transparent, and the path on which we are walking must be consistent. The prison service cannot make itself independent from the surrounding legal system, and the responsibility for the consequences should be borne exclusively by the prison services. It has to understand that it has a role to play in a broadly interpreted legal system. And an important point is that after 30 years of trying to find its rightful path, the Hungarian prison system ultimately assumed its rightful role, as well as the traditions that were handed down to it from centuries of legal development. We have a constitutional criminal code, and this conveys the message that we are respecting constitutional values. And the prison service is expected to execute constitutional legal consequences. We are serving the public good, a societal situation where life can be lived because human life and assets are protected. The Hungarian national hymn says, the anthem says that the state has to protect human life as well as human assets. In the future as well, the criminal code must meet the same requirements, and fundamentally the requirements that are expressed in the following words. It is a bulletproof shield in protecting society, in solidifying public security, as well as in developing a rightful legal philosophy in society. This is a daunting and a gigantic task, not only because you have to be well-versed in law, but you must be very brave as well. I believe that the criminal code is meeting all the requirements, and I command the day on which this new code celebrates its 10th anniversary. Thank you very much for having listened to me. Thank you very much, Ministerial Commissioner, for your presentation.